Very good afternoon to you. If you're just joining us, welcome to this 1 hour special, looking back at the Marikana events as they took place in Marikana, that's in the Northwest Province, back in 2012, August 16. But there were days leading up to that. Let's look back now at the roots of this conflict that led to the killing of 34 mine workers near the Lonmin Platinum Mine at the Marikana community. This was in August of 2012. One organization, Benchmarks Foundation, says the benefits of mining are not reaching the workers or the surrounding communities, and compounding this are the growing inequalities. Well, let's discuss this now, and I'm joined by David van Wyk. He is Benchmarks Foundation's chief researcher. He talks to us from Bloemfontein. David, good morning to you, or good afternoon to you, I should say. Thank you very much for your time. The workers in Marikana, back in August of 2012, they demanded two things: a living wage, and they named it 12,500 Rand, including better living conditions. If we look back at the 9 years, what has been achieved in these two demands?
Well, I think that, first of all, we must recognize that it was part of a wave of strikes that went through the platinum area from the far west right through to Marikana in the east, and that there are 3 additional workers that were killed at the Aquarius mine on the 1st of August 2012 and 12 others wounded. So in actual fact, it's not 10 plus 34, it's 13 plus 34 that we should count as the people who died during that wave of strikes. We visited Marikana with a Parliament Commission mandate with the Legal Resource Center, George Bezos, myself and his team, days after the massacre, and we visited the mine hostels at the time, and we found 12 to 14 people packed into hostels that resembled concentration camps from the Second World War, basically, and the conditions were absolutely appalling at that time, with leaking roofs and so on. 34,000 workers of Lonmin were packed into those hostels, with a small number having family accommodation and some living in the informal settlement around the mine. Now, what has changed since then is that Lonmin, and after Lonmin Sibanye, which took over in 2018, reconverted those hostels into family accommodation. So now you have 3,000 or 4,000 workers that are accommodated in family accommodation, and the other 30,000 basically pushed out into the Wonderkop community, the Ikaneng community, and Marikana itself, the RDP section, and Marikana West, and so on.
Yeah.
And so the conditions for 4,000 workers and their families have improved, but the condition for the other 30,000 workers has not, because the situation in those surrounding communities, the informal settlement, Wonderkop, RDP section, Marikana, Marikana West, and Lapologang, and so on, are absolutely appalling. People don't have proper access to water. The housing situation is appalling. People do not have access to electricity, although there's a huge electricity substation supplying the mine, and the power lines run over the houses of the community. The air pollution situation is also not very good. And many of the shops have actually closed down. They are under care and maintenance. They were not quite viable in 2012, and since 2012 they have shut down, and I think that there's only one shaft, K4, which really is viable at the moment, and so many workers have been retrenched from 2012 to 2018, and they are sitting in the communities around the mine waiting for jobs to come, which I doubt will come.
Yeah. David, earlier today, I had the chance to look at the newspapers, and I found an article written by John Capel, and you'll remember him as a former founding director of the Benchmarks Foundation, and he now runs an organization whose seed funding was in part given to that particular institution he runs now by Sibanye-Stillwater, and I suppose he puts that out in order for people to not be wondering and saying that, is he paid to say all of this that he is about to say? And this is what some of what he says in that article in the Sunday Times today. And I quote now, he says, Sibanye-Stillwater has done the following: initiated the Marikana Renewal Program with a strong focus on surrounding communities, established a wall of remembrance with the names of the deceased miners, food security in the form of home gardens, whether it be subsistence farming or large-scale agricultural interventions, and processing facilities have been established. Money has been made available to convert certain facilities into economic hubs. Are you saying that what John Capel details here is not what is reality in the Marikana community today?
Well, we've been in and out of Marikana since December, almost on a monthly basis. We were there just last week, Wednesday. Now, I also took the trip which Sibanye organized for journalists and NGOs earlier this month or late in July. And I must be frank with you, the Marikana Renewal Project is non-existent. The trip that we took from Mooinooi to Marikana took a very circumventing route that took us across tar roads and avoided the town of Marikana altogether. It didn't pass through Marikana, it didn't pass through the RDP section, it didn't pass through, the informal settlement, it didn't pass through Wonderkop or any of those places. We reached the Koppie via tar road, which most workers don't use. They use absolutely appalling roads, which are worse than they were in 2012. And frankly, the projects that John refers to there are in Bapo, in Sekhwalani, and in Majakaneng. And that is where they took us. That was an extension of a clinic, a high school that was built, and some very ramshackle garden projects in people's yards. They could show us exactly two of those in two households in Sekhwalani, very far from Marikana, about almost 30 kilometers away from Marikana itself. They avoided the town of Marikana and its surrounding villages like the pest, almost, one can say. Now, Mr. Capel was the executive director of the Benchmarks Foundation for the whole time that I was there between 2007 until last year. And I must also be honest with you, Mr. Capel has never been out in the field with me except for two occasions during a tenure of almost 16 years of working at Benchmarks Foundation. So all the field work was left to community monitors, to myself as the lead researcher, and to the research department itself. It is very sad to see that, once one starts getting an income from a big corporation, you start singing from the hymn book because they put the food on your table. The Benchmarks Foundation doesn't take any money from corporations or mining companies. Our money essentially comes from church organizations all over the world and in South Africa itself, and we are associated with the South African Council of Churches. So I would contest every one of those points, and I would like to invite him to come with me to Marikana, the real Marikana, not these far-flung sections which are miles and miles away from where the massacre took place.
Sure.
Now, when we talk about the monument and the Wall of Remembrance, the Wall of Remembrance is not actually at the Koppie. It's not actually at the hill where people were shot. It is far away. It is at a village, a security village, where the security companies operated from that participated in the massacre, which now house the widows of the workers that were killed. And, it is a complex that actually cuts off those widows from the public and cuts them off from anyone who would like to find out exactly what their situation as the widows are. Now, Mr. Capel was with me in a discussion with Lonman immediately after the massacre with the Norwegian development minister. And at the time, we said to them, we don't think that it's ethical or moral to give jobs to the widows in a place where their husbands perished.
Yeah.
In fact, the widows should have been compensated for the loss of income from their breadwinners for the entire lifespan of that breadwinner right through to retirement and pension as well, rather than putting them underground under those appalling conditions in which mine workers have to work.
Sure. So, in short, John Capel is singing for his supper, is what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Wow. We're going to have to get John Capel to respond in part to what you are saying, but based on what he has said in that Sunday Times article, I wonder whether he is going to agree with you.